All right, well, we're going to bring up our guest speaker for the morning. As I told you, it's Steve Ehrenfeld. He's going to come and share a conversation with Jen Guionsley. Steve's an interesting guy, but I think the thing that I find most interesting about Steve is his knowledge of music. And he'll touch on that a little bit, but he's going to share mostly his life story. But I've been trying for years to stump him. If you think you've got some obscure song that you know that, you used to listen to in high school, that this one song, the band never had another hit, he'll never know that. He'll know it. There's nothing that you can say to him that he won't know. If I said to him, "Stumbling In," yeah, or "Lot of Love," yeah, and the year, of course, was, yeah, and she also had hits with. She also probably had other hits, right? You had Rumba Girl. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. So, while you're sitting there, if you can think of something that you think you got an inside track on, he knows them all. So anyway, but he's going to share his story and with the help of Jen. And so let's bring him up here, Steve and Jen.
All right, good morning. Like I said, I am Jen Guionsley, and I've been at Tyndale for about 19 years in the design department. And I met Steve about 6 years ago when I started going to the DuPage Vineyard Church. And I have the privilege of interviewing Steve this morning, and we're going to be showing some of his pictures in the background that he might go into after we're done. And he's going to read through his as I stop and ask him questions through his testimony. Okay. Steve, is there anything you want to say before?
Yeah, I just want to say good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here today. Okay.
All right, so we're going to start with Steve. You want to tell us about your parents and where you were born?
Yes, I was born in Chicago, and I was an only child. My parents both worked and were married for 32 years. My mom met my dad in a bank. They both worked there as tellers in the bank. My parents got married in May of '72. We lived in the city for a while and grew up in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood in Chicago near Diversey and Austin Avenue, not too far from the Brickyard Shopping Center, if you guys know where that is. Our family didn't practice any particular religion, and I was essentially raised in a non-religious Catholic household. My mother was a Catholic who had been brought up in a strict Catholic family and attended an all-girls parochial school. On the other hand, my father was Jewish, but attending religious services wasn't something we pursued. Mom and Dad bought a mobile home after they got married, and then I was born. I was a very sick baby, and because of my mom's diabetes, I was taken out early by cesarean section. So in the late 70s, we moved to the suburbs. We moved to the suburb of Bartlett. It was basically a bedroom community back then. Very nice suburb. We bought a new house in 1977. It was a new subdivision. We were one of the first ones moving in. We watched our new house get built. I would say my life in Bartlett was pretty good. We had pretty much everything I wanted. It was a good life. But my mom had diabetes for 30 years. She had to take insulin shots every day. My home life was pretty good, but it wasn't an easy one. My parents had a lot of financial problems, so we had problems paying the bills and making ends meet. We weren't wealthy people, and it was a struggle.
Yeah, I know that the diabetes was hard on you all.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the neighborhood in Bartlett and what school was like for you?
I went to public school and got good grades and excelled in school. I was sort of a loner and didn't have very many friends. I kept to myself a lot. I was usually picked on a lot and got into fights at school. I didn't have a church or a community of people or things to get involved in. I didn't have the type of role models who could be real friends, so I was just a kid off by myself, including being in the house alone while both mom and dad worked. The neighborhood I lived in was mostly all girls, and because we were the first ones there were no other boys to play with. I kind of got myself into trouble. I was like Dennis the Menace, and I just did whatever I had to do to get attention. So I just basically coped that way by getting into hobbies like what Greg has talked about, like music and collecting music and other sorts of things. So it wasn't all music, but I think it would have been better if I was involved in something. But I did whatever I had to do with the situation that I was in. Okay.
So, can you share some insights about what your parents did for a living?
My mother worked as a secretary, and her morning commute was a 25 to 30-mile commute to work and back home. She worked in Glenview. Dad drove a taxi cab during the day and sometimes at night, then came back to sleep for a few hours. Sometimes he would sleep in the cab for just a few hours and go back out there to earn money. This was a very grueling schedule for my dad. He didn't sleep very much and would eat a lot, which took a toll on his health in later years. I would usually come to work with my dad and be dropped off by my mom after she got off work at 5. Other times I was at the house by myself. There wasn't anyone to watch me, so I usually went to work with my dad because we didn't want to pay a babysitter or daycare.
That sounds like a challenging time. So can you tell us about how financial problems led you all to move to first Arizona and then Las Vegas?
Yeah, my parents continued to struggle with financial issues. They fought and argued all the time. These were difficult times. Amazing that they made it so long. So in the mid-'80s, around December 1985, we had a lot of financial problems and credit card debt. We had creditors after us, and we had to sell our house and move to Tucson, Arizona for 2.5 years. It was a very small town back then and not many jobs. It was kind of difficult. The moving decision to move to Tucson and Las Vegas was my dad's. My mom thought it was a mistake and we should have stayed in Bartlett and kept the house and pay off our bills. We eventually came back to Illinois briefly in 86, 87. We had a 1985 Buick Somerset Regal pulling a small U-Haul trailer across the country. The car was small and cramped. We had plastic garbage bags on the back seat. I had a little dog, and it was jumping up and down and barking in the back seat. We came back to look for a place to live, and no one would rent to us because our credit was no good. So we ended up sleeping in the car or living out of motels for about a year. My mom had to work through a temporary agency. Employers wanted a home address to get hired. And at the time, the economy in the state of Illinois wasn't very good. She would usually get ready for interviews by putting her makeup on in the Dunkin' Donuts washroom or maybe in the motel. This became too difficult, so we decided to move back to Arizona with the little money we had when we went back to Tucson. We made the mistake of buying a house there, not checking it out. This was my dad's decision. Then we didn't have enough to pay the mortgage. We had a difficult time paying for the house. So we abruptly rented the house out to renters. Big mistake. The renters skipped out on us and they damaged our house, our stuff, our furniture. They left us no key. They kicked a hole in the wall. Very bad. Eventually, we lost the house. The bank took it. We were living in an apartment. My mom wasn't able to pay for the car, so we owed them the car. And they repossessed that too. So we had to do things like walking or pushing a shopping cart to get groceries. Back in those days, they didn't have an Uber. So you probably, like you have now, we didn't have phones or stuff. And so they probably had cabs, but that didn't exist. So my mom went to real estate school in Tucson during this time, just to get a better job, but that didn't work out because she couldn't find a job in real estate. So we ended up getting into student loan debt that was later repaid. We eventually did get another car and decided to move out of Tucson to Las Vegas, Nevada in 1988. We got an apartment and lived in it for 10 years until 1998, and then bought another house. That was around the time that Frank Sinatra passed away. I remember that time. So I remember when he passed away, the old blue eyes, and it was just a couple of days, and I remember that. So okay. I lived there. Okay, I lived there for 14 years in Vegas. My parents moved there only for work. Our goal was to save up enough money and to eventually move out of Vegas and come back to Illinois. It was basically just to build like equity in the house. Life in Las Vegas was hard. My mom didn't like it at all. She wanted to leave and go back to Illinois. Vegas was a tourist destination, very transient town, and it was a town based on money, and it was gambling and drinking destination, and not the best place to live, especially not for families. I would say it's okay if you're a tourist and you want to go there for fun, but not to live. But we stuck it out until 2001 when my dad passed away. Then my mom and we put the house up for sale in 2003. Then we found an apartment online that I still live here in Illinois.
Throughout those financial challenges you've described, was there any relatives who stayed in touch with you or who helped?
The relatives in the family were dysfunctional and none were believers. Mother's family was Catholic. We barely communicated with each other especially on my mom's side. We saw each other on the holidays. When we did see each other, it felt just like we were stepchildren, disowned from them. After we moved away, the family became more and more distant until they all stopped communicating. Basically, we were more like as strangers. We became estranged. We didn't have much of a relationship with them over the years. It's been about 40 years since I last got together with the immediate family on my mom's side. I did get to speak with my godmother on my mom's side 10 to 15 years ago, Aunt Wanda. But she told me on the phone she had to get permission from the family to get together with me. She passed away last year at age 99. I remember speaking to her, and she says, we haven't communicated. She says we were like strangers. I agree. I tried to reach out to some of my relatives on my mother's side, but I guess they didn't want to see me or have anything to do with me or pretend they didn't know me. The ones I communicate with are on my dad's side, but there's not many left, and I don't get invited to family things on either side, and this is so sad.
And then, Steve, your dad passed away in 2001, followed by your mom in 2004. Can you share with us what happened during that time?
Yes, of course. My dad was very sick in 1999, and he had a stroke. He had a few heart attacks in 2000 and was in and out of the hospital. He passed away in October of 2001 at 66 years old. It was a month after the 9/11 attacks in New York City. Not really sure if he was aware of what was going on. My mom cried for days, and she had to cope with being a widow. It took a toll on her as well and her health. My mom was getting very sick from her diabetes in 2002. Her body was filling up with water because her kidneys were failing. She had to do dialysis 3 times a week. She had low vision and walked with a cane. I didn't finish school because I dropped out. I also had to take care of my parents, especially my mom. My mom set me up with a driver's school to get me set up with driving because she was not able to do because of her sickness. She also tried to get me some work because I didn't work. The driving school was a blessing. The people became like family to me. My mom passed away at home in September 2005. I was really broken up and cried because now I was all alone and didn't know what to do. I didn't have any family or friends that could help. So I decided to call my driving instructor, Mitch, and told him what happened. I said, my mom just died and I'm all alone and I don't know what to do. He helped me get my mother buried and provided support, and I became sort of adopted and part of their family. The loss of my mom was very hard on me because she was the only family that could give me guidance.
Yeah, Steve, I'm sorry about that. So how did you cope with the grief during this time?
I had to go to grief counseling and all sorts of things. Grief counseling, and sometimes I got into all sorts of things I shouldn't have, like going to bars and being around bad people, just because I felt so alone and empty. I had to depend on the Lord for many years to come. It was not until 2006 that a neighbor invited me to come to church. I was not raised in a church and decided it might be better if I was involved in something, maybe being around a community of believers and maybe make some connections. So I had decided to make that decision. I was part of several churches back and forth in the Yellow Box Community Christian Church in Naperville before coming to the Vineyard in 2010 after a friend from one of the churches invited me to come.
Yeah, that's wonderful that your neighbor invited you to church. So can you tell us about finding your first job?
Yeah, in 2007, I finally got a steady job, but it was not the best one. I had a delivery job and worked in a restaurant. It was a lot of work and pressure, and my boss treated me badly, but I was just planning to stay until I could get my GED. I was there for 13 years until March of 2020. I would work in the kitchen and do deliveries. I was overworked and underpaid. I eventually did get my GED in 2014, as you can see back there. I only needed to do the math part because I passed everything else. And after several tries on the computer plus 2 times on paper, I finally got it, and I got a 20 points better on my score. So it was very good.
Yeah, that's impressive that you got it. Good job. Last, will you tell us about how you accepted Jesus and then what led you to working here at Tyndale?
Yes. At a men's group at the Crossroads Church, now Gospel Life, I made the decision that I was going to give my life to Christ and accept Him as my Savior. I did so, and I did a baptism at College Church in Wheaton. I realized there's no turning back. I had to come to a decision what I was going to do with my life. I was already at my current church for 12 years when I met Jennifer right here at a small group in 2019.
Praying for revival.
Yes, yeah. Well, I didn't know who she was. I just thought, well, she's not going to like me. But I did it because I wanted to get connected, but I wasn't really sure about Jen. Because I mean, she's going to find out. She's going to find out who I am, and she might not accept me. So I was okay. My current job was basically a dead end, and I wanted to get out. The pandemic started in the beginning of 2020 and was causing me a lot of anxiety and worry. I really needed to get out of my job, but I didn't feel I had any place to go. I felt stuck. The pandemic shut everything down, so I wasn't working, and so this gave me the opportunity to look for something else. Jennifer over here worked for Tyndale, and I was in her small group at church, which also had other Tyndale employees, including Mike Morrison, Kim Manisa, and later Ruth and Kimberly joined. And we discussed maybe me applying for a position at Tyndale. So probably in the fall of 2020, Tyndale had a custodial position open. I decided to apply for that position. I think I went on 3 interviews. I dressed up properly for the interview because that's what my mom always taught me to do. Always make a good first impression. So that's what I did. I had to do all the references and the resume. I knew how to do a resume because I kept my mom's resume first, just so I would know. I wasn't sure what kind of a place Tyndale House was. Wasn't sure if I was going to get that position, but I prayed I would get it. I finally did get hired in November of 2020, and I've been here for 3 years in November. Working here has been a blessing. My boss, John Hoffman, who's in the back, has helped me when my car broke down, and others of you have been there for me. I'm very grateful. There is so much to be thankful for the Lord for today. I want to thank everyone who was able to come and hear me speak to you this morning and share my testimony this morning. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for sharing. Now that we have a little time, do you want to point out some of the photos behind us?
This is me as a little boy with my mom. That's me and I was in my apartment with me as a little boy. That's my mom holding me up. I might have been about 2 or 3. Up there above, that's me as a baby, and that's my mom. She's gotten her perm. I'm actually sitting next to my grandmother, but it's blotted out. But it's a really good picture. By the way, my grandmother passed away in the house. I didn't share that, but she passed away in the house, and when I was 10 years old, right in front of me.
And she lived with you guys?
Yeah, she kind of lived with us so we were kind of living with my grandmother too. That picture of me. It was a school picture of me in kindergarten in 1978. So the reason I have that expression is because I guess my dad taught me how to be unfriendly. So I wouldn't be kidnapped because of he just wanted me. Don't talk to anybody. If you're in the house by yourself, don't open the door. So I was very smart little kid. So that's why I look that way, because that's just how I was. So I'm sort of like an introvert. So I usually not really good at talking to people. There's another picture of me. I think that was taken in '83. Down here on the bottom, that's me and my grandmother outside our apartment in Chicago. So, and then that's another picture of me recent. This is my mom and dad after they got married. They're just having dinner. There's that's me and my mom. Probably maybe I was about a year old, 6 months to a year. That's my mom in the '60s. That's the way they used to dress, and yeah, she was very nice. But she always, back in those days, baby boomers were taught to everybody was supposed to behave and just be on your best behavior. So she was I think she was pretty good. That's me and my mom over there in our apartment as me as a little boy, and we had these thing on the couch, the thing to cover it. I think it was like a red cover. And then that's me and back here is me and my mom in the mobile home they lived after they got married. As you can see, there's a TV there, and I can't see it, but I think it's a VCR.
That's your dad and your mom?
Yeah. So as you can see, all the old furniture in the back. So, okay. In here, this is our house in Bartlett. My dad loved to do things on the house. He used to like to decorate the outside. We had awnings on there. There's a lot of aluminum siding from Sears. Back in the days when they do that, they'd come out. My dad loved to do stuff around the house, and I would help him, like mow the lawn and do the yard. This is what the house looked like probably in about 2006. I was there recently. It's been with 3 owners. They changed everything. But it still looks maybe not the same, but this is the way it originally looked. Only thing that's not there is the awnings. So there's our car. As you can see, that's a Buick Somerset Regal. For those of you who might remember it, it had a digital dash, it was brand new. But as you can see, it was only 2 doors, and that back seat was very, very cramped, and you had to pull the seat back. So anybody who remembers the Buick Somerset, so that's our Pomeranian dog. Kind of looked like that. Then that's me in my backyard in Bartlett. It looks like I'm pretty happy. That was my happy times. I was a very lucky kid. I've been to that neighborhood. I still wish I was still there, but I think I had a pretty good life. That over there on the left, that was our house in Tucson, Arizona. It's an older house. That's a recent picture. And then that was our last house in Las Vegas up there. So I lived in 3 houses. Okay, there's mom and dad in the 80s when they were healthy. Down there, that was before my mom got sick. My mom worked she worked up at the front desk. She used to answer the phone on a switchboard. There were like 20 or 30 lines. That guy came in. He was an Elvis impersonator, and he wanted a mortgage. So they have a lot of Elvis impersonators in Las Vegas. If you've ever been there at the time, I can tell you a little bit about Vegas if you want. So about what it's about because I was there. And then there's my mom, and all those people are gone. But as you can see, my mom is really, really sick. She's
the top right, blue.
Yeah. Because of her skin, the diabetes causes the pigmentation of her skin. I've shared that. So that's another picture that my mom took of me. There's my mom's final resting place. My mom didn't write a will, so I had to go through an attorney, to get her money, and then I paid payments on this. So I had that specially made. So because she was Catholic, so I was just doing it that way. So I was just honoring her, and my mom wanted the best for me, and I know that she didn't want me to spend a whole lot of money on her, but I wanted to get her at least that so she could get a decent burial. And there's me over there getting my GED. So I've achieved quite a lot. I think my mom would be very proud of me if she was here today. Yes. Okay, there's me apple picking. And there's our group right there. It's Jennifer and Mike and Bill. And that's me at Jen's house with her in-laws' dog. So despite the challenges, I've come a long way, but it's still a struggle. I still miss my mom. I really do. And I still wish I would have had a better family life, but I didn't. So
Well, we're glad you're here, and these testimonies are so powerful. I love the verse, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, the power of our testimony. And your testimony reminds us how much of a difference we can make when we are there for people.
Yes,
and
yes.
You chose to go to church instead of going to the other places.
Well, it's something I decided to do. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I made the decision. I think I made the right decision.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad to be back home, and I'm very glad to be at a great place. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So I just thank all of you who were able to come to hear me this morning, and I'm glad I was able to share. So I appreciate every one of you. So.
All right, I'm going to say a quick prayer and then we'll end. So Lord, thank you so much for Steve's testimony. Thank you for his example of choosing you, and thank you for all of those who came around him. I hope that to be a reminder to us to reach out, to be a listening ear, and Lord, just bless us and guide our day. And as Dr. Taylor said, Holy Spirit, guide our work and everything we do here. In your precious name, Jesus. Amen. Yeah, so if anybody wants to ask him about his music, and last, so if anybody's interested, we are going to the warehouse right now if you want to pray over the Fall 23 Bibles, and we're going to meet where the free books are. So I hope you join us. Thank you.